Hello students, I'm Imkong Talnapungan from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today I'm going to speak on the module Paleoarchaeology from the paper Human Origin and Evolution. Well, the learning objectives of the module are to define the concept of paleoarchaeology, to identify the impact of anthropology on historical development of paleoarchaeology, to define contemporary anthropological theories on ancient population society, to describe age structure estimation from archaeological samples, and to be able to define the process of examining the size, the shape, and structure of ancient population. First of all, we will discuss briefly about paleoarchaeology. Paleoarchaeology offers a unique perspective on human history and culture that has contributed greatly to our understanding of both the ancient and the recent past. Paleoarchaeology helps us to understand not only where and when people lived on the earth, but also why and how they have lived, examining the changes and causes of changes that have occurred in human cultures over time, seeking patterns and explanations of patterns to the origins of agriculture and complex societies. Unlike history, which relies primarily upon written records and documents to interpret great lives and events, paleoarchaeology allows us to far back into the time before written languages existed and to glimpse the lives of everyday people through analysis of things they met and left behind. Biodemographers finds indicate that some people lived at a site over a certain time range and tell us something about the numbers of people who lived there and those who died there. Knowledge of past human populations traditionally came from studying human osteological remains from archaeological contexts. Once the preserve of paleontologists, anthropologists, and archaeologists, it now attracts biologists, geneticists, bioinformaticians, and chemists with fresh methods and perspectives that have made this field an exciting multidisciplinary endeavor. Now let us see the definition of paleoarchaeology. Paleoarchaeology is the only field of study that covers all time periods and all geographic regions inhabited by humans. Paleoarchaeology is a subject which is simultaneously intensely interesting and difficult. It is intensely interesting because its subject matter is the life and death of our ancestors. Paleoarchaeology is concerned with the impact of cultural and environmental change on the lives of past people. The subject is difficult because of the nearly complete loss of the data needed for the analysis. Now, paleoarchaeology in a broad sense can be defined as the search for human activity zones, the recovery and documentation of these zones, and the analysis of remains and their interpretation. The main purpose of the discipline is to study artifacts made and used by prehistoric populations in order to reconstruct human material culture and activity patterns and thereby elucidate the development of humans as cultural beings. It is the anthropological field that studies the material culture of former human populations. The most ancient of these populations are the subject of Paleolithic, which deals with the material remains of early hunter-gatherers, from the first stone artifacts of million years ago to artifacts documenting the initial steps toward sedentary life and agriculture at the end of the last ice age. Traditionally, paleoarchaeology relied on morphological studies of bone material evidence, although in recent years it has also been based on DNA and stable isotope evidence as well. It investigates the structure and dynamics of past human populations using evidence from traces of human activities and remnants of material culture in the archaeological record. Now let us define fossil. A fossil is the preserved remains of an organism that has died. Fossils tell scientists, called paleontologists, about living things such as their biology and environmental conditions over Earth's history through the rock record. In addition, they give clues to the condition of the Earth, that is climate, at the time that the fossil was preserved, and possibly relate changes of an organism over time. Fossils are of different types, such as mold fossils. When sediments bury an organism and the sediment hardens into rock, the organism decays slowly inside the rock, leaving a cavity in the shape of the organism. When cast fossil, the cavity or mold mentioned above can fill in with mud. When the mud hardens, it takes on the shape of the organism. Petrified fossil. Minerals like calcium can soak into the buried remains of an organism. The mineral replaces the remaining bone and changes it into rock. Carbonized fossil. When organism parts are pressed between layers of mud or clay that hardens over time, squeezing the decaying organism away and leaving a carbon imprint in the rock, since all living things contain carbon. Trace fossil. When the mud or sand hardens into rock where a footprint, trail or burrow was left behind. Then the study of fossils together with other geological and biological evidence provides information on the history of Earth and the evolution of life. Fossils provide evidence about the relative age of rock strata, environments, and evolution of life. The fossil record has been used to develop the worldwide geological timescale. Organisms may leave traces of their existence in the sediments formed during or shortly after their lifetime. Bioarchaeology. Emergence. In the past several years, anthropologists, archaeologists, sociologists, and social historians have produced a literature on paleoarchaeology. The literature on ancient population and their society is a long rumination on the question of the nature and genesis of social subordination. The question is not a trivial one, since the answers given determines our vision of the future and our evaluation of whether or not it is realistic to hope for egalitarian society. The task of representing the field of paleoarchaeology has been enormously challenging. Not only is the field growing before one's eyes, a truly moving target, but it has broadened over the years in ways that make a succinct statement of its contributions of all but impossible. Departing from the anthropological conventions of the time, their concern was not only focused on the parts of the world traditionally studied by anthropologists on exotic, technologically of primitive cultures or populations, with relating the insights yielded in cross-cultural study to the early societies in which they lived. Curiosity about ancient life filtered through a sense that the problems facing them in terms of livelihood struggle. This discipline strives to construct a vision of humanity from the past to future. It is perhaps ironic to highlight a dissonance between paleoarchaeology and anthropology. In the past several years, anthropologists, sociologists, and social historians have produced literature on paleoarchaeology. It is the fact that the discipline has been subject to prevailing modes of thought through archaeological, biological, and cultural that seeks to reduce bias in research findings, anthropological hiring practices, and the scholarly production of knowledge, and emerge as a reaction to a perceived endocentric bias within the discipline. This figure illustrates the stratigraphic column of fossil finds. Now let us discuss about the theoretical orientation of paleoarchaeology. To understand the sensibility of population, it is important to observe picture sequence of past life. The long and painful sufferings of humans were met under several circumstances. One theoretical orientation will arise and may grow in popularity until another is proposed in opposition to it. Often one orientation will capitalize on those aspects of a problem that a previous orientation ignored or played down. Paleoarchaeology deals with theories developed and contribution made by different anthropologists. A more holistic approach stemming from paleoarchaeology has provided a more adequate understanding of the overall picture. It is difficult to predict what theory will be like in the future. Some ideas are likely to be discarded or ignored and others revised. Scholarly disciplines and theories are very much the products of their times, and understanding how and why ideas have changed, it's part of what we need to understand. But some theoretical approaches and theories lead to greater understanding because they're more predictive of the world around us. When a cultural trend is transmitted from person to person, from an original source to numerous others, the idea of a contagion, spreading an idea almost like an illness, would spread through contact and interaction. Consider how hip-hop culture emerged from within urban areas but is now known in all regions of the society, including suburban and rural areas as well. Prehistoric period belongs to the time before the emergence of writing. It is believed that man learned writing only about 5,000 to 8,000 years ago during the Neolithic period. Stone Age is divided into three periods with Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic. Out of them, Paleolithic, which was the longest, and Mesolithic representing hunting-gathering stage, while the Neolithic represents the stage of food production, that is plant cultivation and animal husbandry. Now the term Paleolithic was coined by archaeologist John Lubbock in 1865. Paleolithic age spanned from 500,000 years ago till 10,000 years BC. That means 500,000 years ago, when tool-making members of Homo erectus had arrived. Now it is divided into three periods: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic ages. The transition from each of these phases to successive phases was slow and marked by increased fineness in the stone tools and technology of the time as follows: Lower Paleolithic age tools, hand axe and cleaver; Middle Paleolithic tools, which were known as flakes; Upper Paleolithic tools, which consist of flakes and blades. Further, this division is not uniform around the world because of several factors such as time lag, climatic vagaries, great distances, numerous geographical and physical barriers, etc. Paleolithic age finally ended with the end of the Ice Age in about 10,000 BC. Bioarchaeology Techniques. Now, because of persistent methodological problems, however, paleodemographic analysis has achieved only limited credibility among mainstream demographers. It is fair to say that past paleodemographic analyses were often too crude to be believable. It is also true that recent methodological advances, not yet known to most demographers, have moved paleoarchaeology to a firmer scientific footing. Most important such advances have been in the areas of age estimation, mortality analysis, and adjustment for the effects of demographic non-stationary on skeletal age at death distributions. In principle, paleoarchaeology also allows the reconstruction of demographic trends over time span that are unattainable by any other branch of population science. Because of persistent methodological problems, however, paleodemographic analysis has achieved only limited credibility among the mainstream demographers. Various methods are involved to conduct examinations, such as excavation. Now, excavation is the most well-known aspect of paleoarchaeology. Paleoarchaeologists excavate remains buried under the earth, soil, and other deposits built up naturally above sites over time through slow accumulation and more dramatic climatic events. As sites grow, change, are destroyed, and rise again over time, successive layers of soil develop around the artifacts and the features. These layers are called as strata, and the recording and reading of the layer is called as stratigraphy. Now let us talk about the survey and the mapping method. Imagery from satellites, photographic, infrared, and radar, space shuttles, and airplanes helps archaeologists identify the surface features, while geophysical prospecting tools such as magnetometers, conductivity meters, and ground-penetrating radar aid in locating subsurface features. Isotopic dating consists of absolute and relative ages. The adjacent diagram shows several rock layers that have not been overturned, relative ages of these layers. A is the oldest layer and C is the youngest layer. However, if the rocks do not contain any fossils, no information about the actual or absolute ages of the rocks in millions of years. Now, the principles of superposition and cross-cutting relationships tell us that one rock layer or igneous intrusion is older than another, that is, they enable the relative age of the rocks to be determined, but they do not tell us how old any of the rocks are. They do not provide any information about the absolute ages of any of the rocks. An entirely different process is needed to provide this information. This process is known as the isotopic dating. It enables the absolute ages of igneous rocks, some metamorphic rocks, and some organic remains to be determined. Now let us discuss about the radioactive decay. Some elements undergo a process called as radioactive decay, by which particles are emitted from the nucleus of an atom, which then changes to an atom of another element. For example, a form of uranium changes or decays to lead. The atom that undergoes radioactive decay is called the baryon, and the atom that is formed is called the daughter. Now let us discuss about the half-life method. In radioactive decay, it is almost impossible to say when the last of the baryon atom will decay, but the time taken for half the atoms to decay is comparatively easy to predict. The length of half-life, that is a unique feature of each decay process. The half-life of the process given in the above example is 713 million years. Another method of using radioactivity to determine the numerical age of a material is the carbon dating method based on the decay of C14, that is carbon-14. This method is used extensively in paleoarchaeological studies. However, it is of limited use to geologists because the half-life of the relevant decay process is only about 6,000 years, and it can only be used to date materials which were derived from organisms. Consequently, carbon dating is a useful technique for dating organic remains up to about 35,000 years old after about 7 half-lives. The proportion of carbon-14 which remains in the sample is too small to be accurately measured. Now let us discuss about the scope of paleoarchaeology. In the prehistoric period, when most of the people we are interested in were living by hunting and gathering in groups that were both nomadic and relatively small, we cannot realistically expect to ever find archaeological evidence that will permit us to solve the problems of paleoarchaeology in a completely empirical manner, even for one group. It focuses more inclusive and can focus on a range of human populations. Emphasis is given to the creative use and management of resources for creative adaptation, human development, and sustainability of environments. The possibility of community collective action, role of human labor in metabolism, nature of risk-taking and risk aversion in human behavior, diversity of environmental perception. Now, what is the cultural context of paleoarchaeology? In short, all anthropologists of one kind or another are liable to investigate almost everything about human beings, our emotions, our behaviors, how people organize their living, our language, our religion, and so forth. A good way to emphasize anthropology's broad scope is to say anthropologists are interested in all human beings, whether living or dead, are interested in many different aspects of humans, including their technologies, family lives, political systems, religions, and languages. In order to show the complementary nature of the anthropological and demographic approaches for the study of past populations, the most important in such advances have been in the areas of age estimation, dental development, mortality analysis, demographic non-stationary, adjustments for the effects of demographic non-stationary on skeletal age and death distributions, reconstruction of ancient population sizes and dynamics, which are based on paleoarchaeology, ancient DNA, as well as inference from modern population genetics. Now let us see what are biodemographers. Now, it is concerned with understanding the complementary biological and demographic determinants and interactions between birth and death processes that shape individual and population. The biological component brings human demography under the unifying theoretical umbrella of evolution, and the demographic component provides an analytical foundation for many of the principles upon which evolutionary theory rests, including fitness, selection, structure, and change. Biodemographers are concerned with birth and death processes as they relate to the population in general and the humans in particular, whereas population biologists specializing in life history theory are interested in these processes only insofar as they relate to fitness and evolution. Now let us discuss behavioral modernity. Behavioral modernity is a suite of behavioral and cognitive traits that distinguishes the current Homo sapiens from other anatomically modern humans, hominins, and primates. Although often debated, most scholars agree that modern human behavior can be characterized by abstract thinking, planning depth, symbolic behavior, for example, art, ornamentation, and music, exploitation of large game, and play technology, among others. Underlying these behaviors and technological innovations are cognitive and cultural foundations that have been documented experimentally and ethnographically. Some of these human universal patterns are cumulative cultural adaptation, social norms, language, cooperative breeding, and extensive help and cooperation beyond close kin. These traits have been viewed as largely responsible for the human replacement of Neanderthals along with the peopling of the rest of the world. Arising from differences in the archaeological record, a debate continues as to whether anatomically modern humans were behaviorally modern as well. There are many theories on the evolution of behavioral modernity. Cultural diversity and technological complexity. Now let us discuss on this. Paleoarchaeology illustrates how natural selection and cultural selection weaken the relationship between census population size, cultural diversity, and mean skill level, suggesting that one should not expect population size to predict the diversity or complexity of a cultural trait under all conditions. The concept of effective population size is central to understanding why the effects of population size can vary among traits that are passed by different mechanisms of cultural transmission within the same population. Now, what are the applied contexts of paleoarchaeology? The result is an exciting new interdisciplinary approach of great potential influence in and out of academia, that's not only connected with the professional concerns of anthropologists, but also adequately presents anthropologically analyzes the ancient people and native. The increasing use of research methods across the social sciences and humanities, the growth in popularity of the methodology and object of analysis within mainstream applied anthropology, it also offers a groundbreaking examination of developments within the field to define how it might advance empirically, methodologically, and theoretically, and cement a central place in academic study both within anthropology and across disciplines. Now let us summarize this module. In the above discussion, we will be able to outline major and historical developments in the discipline of paleoarchaeology and have a clear chronological development of anthropological theory by the end of the term. In focusing on the spread of cultural triads from one area and its acceptance by another area, it minimized the creativity of human beings. Also, remaining unexplained is the situation of culture that have had no contact with each other or with any other culture, yet exhibiting similarities and parallels with each other. In fact, it provides the foundation for the development of crucial ideas and concepts that were employed not only by anthropologists but specialists of other disciplines. In doing so, it serves as a melting pot of interdisciplinary critical thinking. That's all for this module. Thank you so much for listening.